Who are the Dardanians of Europe and Troy? The earliest mention of Dardanians in European texts come from Homer's Iliad from the 8th century BC. However, the Trojan War, which it depicts, is dated 1300 to 1200 BC. In the Iliad, Dardania, Troy, and Ilion all refer to the same mythical location in northwest Anatolia. Dardanos is the mythical founder of Dardania and the Trojan dynasty. He is the father of Ilus, from whom Ilion was named, and grandfather of Tros, after whom Troy was named. In all the myths concerning him, Dardanos is said to have migrated from the Aegean Sea to Anatolia, where he founded the Trojan lineage. Priam, the king of Troy, and father to Paris, is explicitly referred to as a Dardanian by Homer. Now, the oldest non-European texts that mention the Dardanians are from ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptian inscriptions come from around 1270 BC and describe the Battle of Kadesh, a war between the Egyptians and Hittites. The Egyptians, led by Pharaoh Ramses II, mention the land of Dardania, in northwest Anatolia, as an ally of the Hittites. Dardania is mentioned many times as a territory, but also as a people, one example of which is the Dardanian charioteers who were brought as prisoners to the pharaoh by the prince. The Egyptians also mention the Musians as allies to the Hittites. This is important since it proves that Homer's account of both the Dardanians and Musians in Troy is historically accurate, and not fiction. It's also important because the Musians, Dardanians, as well as neighboring Phrygians, are all related to each other. They all tie their origins to a migration from the Balkans, the memory of which survived in the myth of Dardanus' migration from the Aegean Sea. We know this migration happened due to linguistic, ethnographic, and archaeological evidence. So, what happened to the original Balkan Dardanians? Did they disappear from history like the Trojans? No, they did not. Since we have not yet found a single, ancient text from Troy, or the Balkans, the only texts we have about the Dardanians are from their recorded interactions with ancient Greeks, or Romans. We know that a powerful king named Bardulis reigned in Dardania around the years 390 to 360 BC. We know that the heart of the Dardanian territory corresponds to an area encompassing today's Republic of Kosovo, but that it extended deep south into Epirus, as Bardulis ruled over the Molossians during his reign, where he also had a war with the Spartans. The archaeological record of Dardania shows a constant undisturbed Dardanian presence around the Republic of Kosovo region since the Bronze Age. It's important to note, the name Bardulis comes from the Albanian word barda, meaning white. Variations of this name are still commonly used by Albanians today. It's also very important to note that the word Dardania itself comes from the Albanian word darda, meaning pear. This etymology is supported by the most esteemed linguists, historians, and ethnographers in the field of Albanian studies such as Johan von Hahn, Gustav Meyer, Edith Durham, Franz Nopska, and so on, and so on. Darda is also the name of an Albanian tribe, and as a toponym is very commonly spread out through Albanian-speaking lands. Ethnographers and historians have also noticed that the name has been translated into the Slavic equivalent in previously Albanian territories that were captured by Slavs after the Slavic invasions of the Balkans in the 7th century AD. We know this was common practice among Serbs, who translated most of the already existing place names they invaded into Serbian. One famous example is Novo Burdo, which they translated directly from the already existing Nova Monte, which means the same thing, New Hill. So, what happened to these powerful Dardanians, who ruled a territory that granted them control over the trade routes to the Adriatic, Aegean, and the Danube? We know that the Roman Empire oppressed them violently, and drove those who refused to become farming slaves into the mountains. However, the Romans never fully captured the Dardanian territory. The Dardanians that did live under the Roman rule, however, contributed to the Roman Empire and its culture. Some of the earliest European Christianity, in fact, was established in Dardania, and many Dardanians became powerful leaders, even emperors, in the Roman Empire. The two most famous of which are Emperor Justinian the Great and Emperor Constantine the Great. So, what happened to the Dardanians after the collapse of the Roman Empire around the 7th century? Well, we know for sure that the name Dardania was present in maps until at least 1770. We also know that there are countless place names across Dardania, Macedonia, and Epirus that show continuous Albanian phonological evolution. This means that Albanian-speaking peoples have inhabited these territories since antiquity. This is further demonstrated by the lower amount of Slavic place names around the Dardania-Albania region. It's also demonstrated by the big East-West divide in the South Slavic languages. All this shows that the indigenous Dardanians resisted, persevered, and survived the Roman, Slavic, and then the Ottoman invasions, until the current day, where we now refer to them as Albanians. On a final note, it's important to clarify that the first time the term Illyrian is used by ancient Greeks is by Hecatus, around the years 400 BC. This is almost 1,000 years later than the Egyptian and Trojan record of Dardanian being used as an ethnonym. Therefore, since the linguistic and archaeological sameness of the Illyrian and Dardanian cultures are firmly established, the term Dardanian should always have priority in a scientific and historical context when referring to Illyrians, as it predates greatly the term used by the Greeks, and is most likely an ethnonym, as opposed to an exonym. There is still much more research to be done. We know that in Harvard's catalogue of all ancient Greek and Roman texts, the Dardanians are mentioned at least 914 times by authors as famous as Plato, Strabo, Herodotus, and more. Despite this, almost no research is dedicated to the Dardanians. For this, there can be no intellectual justification.